Good evening and welcome to the July 24th, 2024 meeting of the Ann Arbor Zoning Board of Appeals, or ZBA. We are a 9-member volunteer board, although we are down by 2 and have 7 members, but we're looking for 2 new members. We are nominated by the mayor and approved by city council. We have 4 applications tonight. Applicants seeking an exception or variance or some other ruling under the city's zoning ordinance, and we will consider those. For each of these 4 applications, we will proceed as follows. We'll first hear from city staff, most typically in the person of the city's zoning coordinator, John Barrett, to my right. And then we will hear from the applicants. The applicants will have 5 minutes to make their presentation, in addition to written materials they've already submitted. When they're done, we may ask questions, both of city staff and the applicants. When that is done, then we'll take questions from members of the audience here. You members will have 3 minutes to speak, and then we will seek questions from anybody that is listening in. They will also have 3 minutes to speak. And we will acknowledge any written materials we've received. Sometimes we receive letters and emails for or against the various applications. So, public comment is available, as I mentioned, in person or remotely. If you are listening remotely and you want to make a comment at the appropriate time of the meeting, press *9 if listening by phone, or use the raised hand feature. For phone access, there's a particular number to call. I'll repeat this number twice. It's 877-853-5247. Again, 877-853-5247. The meeting ID is 938-1648-1007. Again, 938-1648-1007. And you'll be identified as your turn to call by the last 3 digits of your phone or your name if you've put that on through the web link. We will, after hearing all the input, we'll go into a closed session among just the members. We will discuss the application. We'll then form a motion, and we will vote on the motion. In order for a motion to pass, for an applicant to be successful, it needs 5 yes votes. If somebody doesn't get the 5 yes votes and they're unhappy, they can proceed to the Washtenaw County Circuit Court on a timely basis. So with that fairly long introduction, let me take a roll call here of people who are here. I, Todd Grant, the Vice Chairman, am here. Our regular chairperson, Candace Briere, could not be here tonight. Dave DeVarty.
DeVarty here.
Julie Weatherby.
Here.
Mike Daniel.
Here.
Dharma Ackman.
Here.
And Christina Glusak.
Here.
Okay, we have the agenda in front of us with 4 applications, and there's some other stuff in addition at the end, which we'll get into. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Todd, before we go any further, there's going to be a request for postponement tonight on
Okay.
ZBA case number 24-0025, address 1015 Broadway Street. The applicants requested a postponement.
Okay, so that will mean 3 items of business tonight.
Could I add one note? You said that we would go into closed session. We will not. Our meeting is totally open.
Thank you.
But after public comment is closed, then it's just discussion from the board.
Correct.
No further comment from the
That's an
public.
important correction.
But it's important to note that it's an open meeting and it will be an open meeting.
Correct. Thank you. All right. All right. So do I have an approval then for the agenda as modified? Well, I guess we need to address the postponement of Broadway.
That's correct.
First.
So we'll have a public hearing if anyone's here for or speak for or against it. We
Correct.
won't have a staff presentation. We won't have applicant presentation, if you agree to postpone the case.
I
So when we get to that case, then we'll have the public hearing.
Okay.
I move we approve the agenda with that change.
A second? Okay. All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Anybody against? Okay. We have the modified agenda. Our first item is the minutes from last meeting in June. Are there any comments on the minutes? Any changes, corrections? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes from June? Okay, thank you, Julie, and seconded by Dharma. Okay. Calling our first applicant, proceeding on our first application, 911 Miller Avenue, and beginning with city staff, John Barrett.
Okay, good evening. My name is John Barrett. I'm the zoning coordinator for the city of Ann Arbor. The first petition before us this evening is ZBA 24-0024, and the address is 911 Miller Avenue. Teresa Angelini of Angelini and Associates, representing the property owner, is requesting relief from section 5.32.2, alteration to a nonconforming structure, to construct a second floor addition to the existing nonconforming residence. The second floor will contain a new bedroom and bathroom. The residence is nonconforming for the front setback along Arbor View Boulevard and the average front setback along Maple Ridge Street. The property is zoned R1D Single Family Dwelling District. The subject property is located on the south side of Miller Avenue in the Arbor View neighborhood. The property has frontage along 3 streets, Miller Avenue, Arbor View Avenue, and Maple Ridge Street. The home was built in 1930 and is approximately 1,436 square feet in size. The property is 5,488 square feet in area. The residence is a single-family use and will remain as such. The property currently encroaches 7 feet into the front setback along Arbor View Avenue and 12 feet 9 inches into the 29.63 average front setback along Maple Ridge Street. The proposed second story will not encroach further into the front setbacks or increase the nonconformity of the property or the residence. If you'll turn your attention to the monitors, you'll see the first slide shows the zoning map and the subject property highlighted in the center of your screen. And as I stated, it's just south of Miller Avenue along Miller, Arbor View, and Maple Ridge Streets. The next slide is the location map showing surrounding properties and existing conditions. The next slide is the zoomed in aerial photo, and you see that the current residence does not meet the average front setback along Arbor View and Maple Ridge right along here. The next slide shows the survey that was submitted with the application by the applicant. And the next slide is the site plan submitted by the applicant. You can see where the dashed line is. That is the current required setback. The lighter shaded gray is the current footprint of the house, and the darker shade is where the proposed second story addition will be. As I stated, it won't encroach any further towards either one of the front setbacks, and it's just a second story addition, approximately 252 square feet in size. This is the first floor plan of the home. It's the existing floor plan as it currently stands. The next slide is the second floor plan as it is in its current state. And this is the first floor plan being proposed. They're just going to do some interior remodeling on the first floor, which isn't part of this, is part of the project, but not part of the request tonight. and then the second floor plan being proposed with the 2 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms, linen closets, but the new additional 1 bedroom, 1 bath on the second floor. These are the existing elevations that were submitted with the application, the side and the front. The next elevations, the back and the side, and the west and north elevations as being proposed. And you can see this is where from the front, looking at it from Miller, and this where I'm circling with the cursor, the mouse, is the proposed addition. These are the south and the east proposed elevations. These are slides that were submitted with the application by the applicant. You should see the existing front elevation. And this is the proposed front, the existing side, and proposed side. And this is the addition. Existing back angle, proposed back angle of the home. Existing back of the home with the garage and the proposed back. Just a different angle of the addition all the way around. And these are the photos that I took on my inspection. You see the front of the house, the side of the house from Arbor View Street, close in proximity of where the addition's going to be on the second story. Looking down Arbor View and Maple Ridge Street. Looking at the intersection or the faces of the house. Back view of the house, and you see the existing addition on the second story. Looking directly across the street at the from the subject property, just the view of the neighboring properties. And that is the end of my presentation, and I will take any questions that you have at this time.
Any questions for John? All right, hearing none, I guess it's now the turn of the applicant. So is Ms. Angelini, I think, or whoever is here on behalf of the applicant? Good evening.
Good evening, thank you. I'm Teresa Angelini, Angelini and Associates Architects, and representing Katie for that.
It's sometime either now or at the end, please sign in.
I think John covered the issue is certainly that this site is unusual, that it has the 3 setbacks, the 3 street setbacks, and 2 of them really restrict what you can do with this property. When you look at the site plan, I mean, there's a little bit of, you can see how much of the house already is over 3 setbacks. And any possibility of trying to add to the back of the house would mean that we'd be going through a room that's there already in order to sacrificing a bedroom or bathroom to get to an addition. So we looked at several different options. When you look at the second floor of the house right now in terms of the floor plan, I noticed on the city tax assessor site it says that it's a 3-bedroom house, but really there's 1 bedroom that's sort of the primary bedroom on the back south side. And then there are 2 rooms, but you have to go through one to get to the other because of the fireplace placement inside the house. So it's essentially a 2-bedroom house on the second floor. And then the bathroom has pretty compromised ceiling height because of the roof pitches. It's 5 feet 2 inches on the side where the window is now in the small bathroom. So it's pretty small. And this is a growing family. We have 1 child. This notice as an architect and working on these things, type of projects for years, a property turns over quite a bit when you don't have enough space for a family to grow. And this, property has turned over several times in the last few years. But Katie and Corey have lived here for a few years, and they do know the house well and the neighborhood. and they love being across the street from Mac School. And building on top of, this already non-conforming property, just, will reinforce the style of the house. It doesn't block the light or view to any other properties. So what we propose, we hope that you would agree that it reinforces the house, the neighborhood, and it doesn't hurt any other properties. Are there any questions I can answer?
Any questions for Ms. Angelini? Dave?
I have just one question. It looked like from one of the proposed views that there was going to be a new fence added on the property?
No, there's one on the
Or there's an
backside now,
existing
but
property?
we were not adding any
There's
fences.
an existing property, an existing fence? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep, no fences. That's-
Any other questions? All right, well, thank you,
okay.
ma'am. Please sign in.
Okay.
Is there anybody here in the audience who would like to comment on this? All right, no hands. Anybody from the outside? Anybody calling in, Courtney?
There are no callers.
Okay, and I don't think we received any written materials on this, letters or anything, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Oh, one. Okay, I do not have a copy of that.
Here it is.
I brought my own packet, but did not get one.
We have the owners on Zoom as well, if anybody wanted to ask questions.
Okay. Who's the letter of support from, or the letter against from?
Here, hand this down to Todd.
Here, Todd.
Ah, thank you. The letter of support is from Holly Elliott. Good. That is good. They live across Maple Ridge and one house further up north. Okay, great. All right, with that, the public discussion part is ended, and as Dave correctly pointed out, we are not in a closed meeting, we're still open. And now we're having discussion among members about this, seeking a motion. Dave?
This is a textbook case of simplicity for me. It's totally within the existing envelope, consistent with the architecture of the house and design and the architecture throughout the neighborhood. So I'll easily support this.
All right, a motion, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion if you
Great.
ZBA 24-0024, 911 Miller Avenue, alteration to a nonconforming structure. The Zoning Board of Appeals hereby grants relief from Section 5.32.2, alteration to a nonconforming structure to allow construction of a second-story addition to the existing nonconforming residence. The proposed addition will allow for a new bedroom and bathroom. The residence is non-conforming for the front setback along Arbor Boulevard and the average front setback along Maple Ridge Street. The addition will not encroach any further into the required front setbacks. The addition is to be built per the submitted plans.
Is there support? Thank you, Julie. All right, now a roll call. Dharma,
Yes.
Julie,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Dave.
DeVarty, yes.
I also vote yes. Christina?
Yes.
All right. It has passed. Thank you, ma'am. And we are on to our second application tonight, 1000 East Stadium Boulevard.
No, we have to have the,
Go ahead.
we have to have the public hearing for the.
Oh,
project that's being brought
correct.
by.
Thank you,
Sure.
John.
No problem.
Is, so regarding 1015 Broadway Street, ZBA 24-0025, the applicant has requested that it be postponed. We've done that. but given that it was noticed, we will seek any comments that other people have about this project other than the applicant. First, is there anybody here in the audience that wishes to speak on this? No? Here. Is there anybody calling in, Courtney?
There are no callers.
Okay. And I don't know of any written material? No? Okay.
Nothing received.
All right. So the public comment portion of this 1015 Broadway Street is closed, and we will take up the applicant's application later, next month, I guess? Next month.
It's,
All right.
can I just make a quick note?
Yes.
We will also have public hearing next month for this as well, right?
Yes.
Yes,
So
it'll
it's
be,
not
a-
like this
yes.
is the end of the,
no, that'll be just a normal petition application next month.
okay, thank you.
Good. Thank you, Dave. And now we are on to 1000 East Stadium Boulevard, ZBA number 24-1302. And again, with city staff, John Barrett.
Okay, ZBA 24-0026, the address is 1000 East Stadium Boulevard. Elton Topali, representing the property owner, is seeking variances from section 5.24.5 subsection B1, other mixed-use and non-residential and special purpose districts, and table 5.24-3, other mixed-use and non-residential and special purpose district permanent signs. The existing building has approximately 201 square feet of existing signage and 2 freestanding signs. One of the freestanding signs is fronting along East Stadium Boulevard and South Industrial Highway. The variance request will allow an additional freestanding sign along East Stadium Boulevard and 68 square feet of signage over the maximum 200 square foot allowance. The property is zoned O, Office District. The subject property is located at the southeast corner of East Stadium Boulevard and South Industrial Highway in the Lower Burns Park neighborhood. The building was constructed in 1982. The current use of the property is office and medical with 3 tenants, an urgent care clinic, an aesthetic center, and a plastic surgery clinic. The property currently has 10 wall signs and 2 freestanding signs totaling the 201 square feet. The Unified Development Code allows the property to have a maximum of 200 square feet of signage. The property is permitted to have 1 freestanding sign per street frontage. One of the freestanding signs is installed at the northeast corner of the building and is visible from both, at the northwest corner of the building and is visible from both East Stadium and South Industrial Highway. The variance request is to allow a 3rd freestanding sign at the northeast corner of the property at the driveway entrance leading to the venue restaurant, the property abutting in the back. The sign will advertise for the venue restaurant. The proposed freestanding sign will be 7 feet tall and contain 34 square feet of advertising area on each side face, totaling 68 square feet. The sign is required to be installed a minimum of 7 feet behind the lot line. If the variance is approved, the property will total 269 square feet of signage. You'll turn your attention to the monitors. You'll see the first slide is the location map showing the subject property highlighted at the center of the property. And the next slide shows the subject property and the location map surrounding properties and existing conditions. And if everyone's not familiar with it, you have the subject property with the 1000 East Stadium with the medical use, the parking lot directly behind it, and then the venue restaurant directly behind it, abutting the subject property. And the proposed signage is going to be in this northeast corner, right where my cursor is. The next slide is a zoomed-in aerial photo photo of the subject property. The next slide is the survey that was submitted with the application. The next slide is a parcel view, kind of like a site map showing the property. And like I said, they've got the approximate location of the proposed freestanding sign start at the bottom, and you see its relationship to the venue restaurant in the background. The next slide shows existing sign conditions. You have multiple signs for the 3 different tenants on each elevation, and then you see the proposed freestanding sign area. This is a visual representation of a concept of what the sign will, proposed sign will look like if the variance is approved. It's going to have internally illuminated letters, approximately 86 inches tall, 57 inches wide. These are the photos that I took at the subject property, just to get a feel for the proposed location at the entrance, and the East Stadium is in the back. This is looking at the current office use from East Stadium. And these are just the different elevations and the existing signage and the current conditions of the property. This is the freestanding sign that's at the northwest corner. It kind of, you can see it visible from both South Industrial and East Stadium. I will say that freestanding signs, if this is approved, they're required to be 200 feet from the existing one, and there's supposed to be 200 feet minimum distance, and this will achieve that. I think it's at least 270 feet from each freestanding sign. This is the elevation from South Industrial, and then this is from the parking lot drive in the south side of the building. And this is looking, turning, facing around, looking directly at Venue, the restaurant. And that is the end of my presentation, and I can take any questions that you have of me at this time.
Any questions for John?
John, you may have noted, will the text be on the back side as well?
Yes, it's going to be a double-faced sign.
Okay. thank
So
you.
it'll be installed perpendicular to East Stadium and have signage on both sides.
Thanks for clarifying that. Okay.
So, right now, there's one freestanding sign,
There's two.
and where are the two on the map?
So there's one at the northwest corner, right here,
Right,
and then there's another one over here.
and those are both for the urgent care / other use signs?
They're both for Boyd right now.
For Boyd,
Yeah.
okay. And right now, are they totally within the 200 square foot?
No, they're non-conforming, 200 linear feet from each other. But this one, the
Okay.
proposed one, will be over here.
Right, so that
And
would,
that's like, from when I measured just from this location to that location is about 275 feet.
so the variance they're asking for is for square footage of sign surface area?
Along with, you can have one freestanding sign per street frontage. And so
So
this
they
one,
have
so
two,
that's,
okay.
due to the location of it, it's at the corner. You can see it from East Stadium. So it
Right.
fronts along East Stadium, but when you're coming up South
I-
Industrial, you can see it from both sides. So it.
I understand.
I covered both sides, covered all my bases, so it's, it's, the way it's uniquely situated, it's uniquely installed by capturing the corner.
And I take note, the sign they're proposing is for a different parcel, a different use on a different parcel.
That's correct.
Does
You can advertise for off-premise signs.
the venue signage currently, did you look at the square footage of what venue has? Is that in compliance? Or
Yes,
is-
yes.
And would this sign added with the venue signage be over the compliance for venue?
Well, it's not going to be on the venue property.
I
So-
understand that, but it's
They-
advertising venue.
But it's taken per parcel though, so I don't,
Okay.
I'd have to calculate what the existing wall sign is. I can look that up. I'll do my best to look that up while we're talking.
Okay.
Julie has a question. Are you done, Dave?
Yes, I'm done.
Yeah.
So do we have a view of what this might look like on the site? I think what I'm worried about is the sightlines turning in and out of that? There's a lot of pedestrians and bicyclists, and it looks like this is a big, solid sign.
So it's going to have to be installed 7 feet behind the lot line, which is going to have to be right in here somewhere.
And it's perpendicular to stadium.
Yes. It's going to have to be 7 feet off this lot line and 7 feet off that lot line. So it's going to be somewhere in here.
I've got a follow-up question. Is the lot line, where's the lot line? Because that's not a road there. So if you look at that, is that drive part of the lot?
Yes.
So they could actually, 7 feet off of the lot line would actually, they could put it anywhere in
They
that
can't,
grass.
well, they can't put it in the driveway. They're not going to put it in the driveway.
Right, I understand that, but it's like,
It's going to be 7 feet, like, off this curb.
gotcha. Well, it doesn't have to be.
Well, it's going to have to be the 7 feet off the property line along the sidewalk on East Stadium.
Correct, I see that.
I have a couple of questions as well. So I think last month or the month before, we had a situation, I think it was on Eisenhower, where a bank moved in and all the allowable square footage for signage had been taken up by all the current tenants. And obviously, the new business needs a sign. So of course, that was an obvious reason to give them the extra square footage. But this is a different situation. So the venue, the restaurant has, I assume, advertising on South Industrial, correct? Signage, because it's, as you drive up on South Industrial, you can see the restaurant on the right. Yes?
Yes.
Yeah. So they're asking for a variance to put a sign about them on somebody else's land, so people driving along East Stadium can more easily see the restaurant. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. So it's not a question where, because all the square foot signage on the property they want to put the sign on has been used up by the existing tenants. It's not a situation where we don't have any sign. We just want to have another sign on somebody else's property to better advertise our restaurant. Is that a fair statement?
Well, I think that might be a question you should ask the applicant.
Okay, okay,
I've
all right. Okay, Dave?
I've got a follow-up question. So if we were to do something to allow something like this, advertising a use from one parcel on another parcel, with the slide you have up right now, if you go kitty corner to the northeast, I think that's a dental building, or it's some sort of medical office.
It's a dental building, I believe. yeah.
Yep. Could they come in and ask for a variance and put up another venue sign over there?
Yeah, they could ask for a variance.
Or they wouldn't.
You don't
even-
have to grant it.
They might not even need a variance, because they might be able to
No,
do it
they-
without exceeding their present signage.
No, the square footage allowance is for the parcel that it's being installed on.
I know.
So they can't,
But kitty corner across,
so you're saying, can they ask for a variance across the
They-
street? Yes, of
or
course.
or they might not even need it. I don't know what kind of
Oh,
signage
They
they
might
have
not,
over there.
yep, exactly.
But ostensibly, they could go all over the place and get venue signs everywhere if we started giving out these variances. I'm just,
Dave, you're not obligated to grant variances, Dave.
okay, I got it.
Debate this in
In the con-
the section of
Okay, gotcha.
Any more questions for city staff? Okay, I think we're ready to hear from the applicant. Elton Topali or, good evening. Hi, please identify yourselves and sign in.
I'm Margaret Kosher, and I'm the owner of Venue.
Good, thank you. Say your name again, Margaret.
Margaret Kosher, P-O-S-C-H-E.
Could you is the microphone on? Could you please turn that on?
Hello?
You need to push it down to the button. Is it red? And push it where it's green.
Oh, there we are.
There, that's much
Okay.
better. Thank you.
Margaret Kosher, owner of Venue.
Eric Frazier, owner of ID Enterprises, and partners with Margaret on her signage needs and the applicant.
Good, thank you.
So
You
maybe
have,
just as a preface, may I just speak as a preface here?
Absolutely.
Okay, so the owners of the urgent care building, I've spoken to them at length and relayed to them the real need that we have to have signage on Stadium. Because as big as that building is, it's the old Lucky's Market, it is virtually invisible from the street. I mean, if you approach it from Stadium going toward the big house, you really don't even see it until you've already passed it. If you approach it from Michigan Stadium going the opposite way, the urgent care building itself and all the trees completely obstruct the view of Venue. So that's the reason why I feel we need to have a sign it just improves business. We're a new, very young restaurant. We're not even 2 years old. And I think that adding a sign that's visible, indicating this is where Venue is, and it's a restaurant and bar, will really, really help. You know, it's a small business. I employ over 60 people at that business. I want it to succeed. And I'm sure, I don't know how much of you know anything about the restaurant business, but it's not an easy business. So I'm trying to bring attention to it in any way I possibly can. So that's the background.
I'll add the addition to just wanting the business to be as successful as it can be. I do believe there's a bit of a safety need here, as Stadium is as Arbor goes, a pretty high traffic, pretty high speed street. And Venue, unlike maybe like Lucky's in the past, where a grocery store you typically have regulars. And while Venue does have regulars, Margaret does a really, really good job with events. And there are, I would say, a good portion of their business is newcomers each time. And it's relatively unclear where to enter their large parking lot if you're not a regular. Especially at those speeds as you're coming up to Woodbury, which runs perpendicular to Stadium right there, you will inevitably miss that drive. And then you're at a really big intersection where Venue's now behind you. And I would say it's stressful for folks, and they're very much looking around, head on a swivel, trying to figure out where to enter. So I'd add that there's a bit of a safety concern in addition to just the business's advertisement. And like Margaret also mentioned, we do have a letter from the urgent care owner. So it's not as much just a matter of us wanting to add signs all over as many properties as possible. It's truly, I would say it's the primary entrance that faces the primary facade of the business. And we've talked with the ownership of that group from the get-go about adding that sign to their parcel. I'd also add, and like John mentioned, the distance between the existing freestanding signs and what we're proposing. It's also the space between those two, the proposed sign and the existing signs, is a parking lot. So just aesthetically speaking, none of the urgent care or Boyd signage is really anywhere near the sign that we're proposing. So just visually, I don't think there would be an oversaturation problem.
And maybe mention also, we're well under the allowable signage that's already on Venue in response to Mr. DeVardy's question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And there are no other freestanding signs with Venue
Right.
either. So,
Thank you.
thanks.
Any questions? Dave?
In your discussions with the urgent care building people, so they have two freestanding signs for Boyd that are non-compliant in terms of being 200 feet from each other. Did you discuss with them the possibility that they would remove one of those as part of the putting your sign up? And then that would bring them more into compliance at the same time. Was that part of any of the discussions you had with them?
We have it.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I have a question for either Ms. Posher or Mr. Frazier. So I take it from your presentation that more of your customers have pulled in from East Stadium than South Industrial, is that
Definitely.
correct?
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely.
Which there also is not a freestanding sign on that entrance either, but since the building is right up to that street, it's less of a problem there, and obviously that's a little bit slower traffic on that end.
It's
So
not as high a traffic.
I would say it's less of a danger and less of a
Stadium
concern.
is far heavier in terms of.
And it's easier to see your building on South Industrial.
It is
Exactly.
much easier.
Okay, anybody else have questions? Okay. Anybody in the audience want to speak on this? Are there any callers, Courtney?
There are no callers.
Okay, and there was a comment about a letter from the medical
No,
folks?
so
Or
that was
that's
just-
just a,
That was a letter of authorization
Oh.
for them to move forward with the variance. So I don't know, Dave, if there was confusion or what, but they're not just applying for, in order to apply for a variance on someone else's property, you have to get a letter of authorization from the property owner,
Right.
which I received. I actually held the application up until I received that letter.
Right.
So
Makes
you have to, you can't just arbitrarily apply for variances on
I mean,
other
we
people's
can't
property.
approve a
Yeah, so
sign and then
I
get
hope
stuck
that
on
wasn't part of the
somebody else.
confusion from earlier, but yes, I would never allow somebody to apply for a variance on someone else's property.
I didn't know we had that
without
much power. We could just say, you're getting a sign,
No.
whether you want it or not, you know?
That's not, unfortunately, that's not the case.
All right. So we're in discussion among ourselves. Well, let me just say, this is a little difficult for me, because it's not the case where somebody doesn't have signage. On the other hand, I think it's important for restaurants, new restaurants in a very busy city and where they're difficult to see, to have signage so people know where the restaurant is. So I'm a little bit on the fence on this. I understand the need. It is somewhat of an unusual situation, and I guess I'd like some help from my fellow ZBA members, one way or the other, to push me off the proverbial fence. Dave?
My questions clearly raised some of my objections towards this. I could lean toward it, but we have a lot of commercial businesses that are slightly off of primary roads or streets. And I find it hard, if there's signage on the existing structure, I find it hard to grant a variance to go above what's allowed on another site in order to increase the visibility for an off-site presentation of a business that's not on that site. And I think that there are situations throughout the community that this sort of, if we start going down this path with this sort of variance, that we could see variances all along Stadium Boulevard. Businesses that are one block or half a block off of Stadium Boulevard and West Stadium as you're getting towards Jackson Road. I drive by this all the time, both going west and east. Eastbound on Stadium, I always see the venue. But you're right, westbound on Stadium, you've got a problematic location for signs on that, and you're right about that. But it doesn't, that fact alone does not, to me, say that we need to have signage on an off-site parcel for your location. And I think to go down that path, in your case, would open the door for other businesses throughout the town to come and ask us for variance. Similarly situated businesses to ask for variances. I know it's a challenge for any restaurant. I grew up in the restaurant business. I was bussing tables in junior high school. So I understand that the restaurant business is tough, and every opportunity you have to get some opportunity to market it is beneficial. I can't see voting for this, I'm sorry to say.
Any other comment? Christina,
Yeah,
sorry.
sure. So I'm in support of this application, and I think given the fact that it's a tricky intersection, tricky site, and the setback is very unique, and they're just trying to, it's a betterment really for their site, I believe, and I'm loosely equating it to Arbor land, where there's the massive sign in front, very close to Washtenaw, isn't that right? And then we've recently approved new signage for the retail that's far, way back, I mean, pushed way back from Washtenaw. So this is a smaller version of that, but I think it could be equated to that. If my memory serves me correctly, that there's a large standalone sign on Washtenaw for all the Arbor land businesses. So I think the size is appropriate. There seems to be a little congestion at that corner in terms of maybe an existing light pole that's perhaps connected to the medical, to the urgent care owner's lot. So we're just looking at it on a Google view, but it seems like that just needs to be coordinated better, so there's not a cluster right there, and the post gets in the way of your signage. But at least the sidewalk is far enough outboard to not cause any issues with pedestrians coming from a football game or whatnot, because there could be a lot of congestion right there too, I anticipate, so. But if that can get worked out at that corner in terms of the placement of the signage with the existing site lighting, that would be great, and I'm in support of it. Thank you.
Mike?
So I appreciate Dave's points here. The slippery slope argument's a fair point to bring up. I think for me, I live not far off the stadium. I drive that quite a bit myself, also further up stadium to get towards Liberty and Jackson. And there's quite a few, as Dave accurately flags, lots of businesses that are set off the street that are hard to see. Another good example I'll give is Wolverine State Brewing over there. Very hard to see from Stadium Boulevard, and I know a lot of people have a hard time finding it the first time. And for a business like that, it's, there's lots of other options to go have food or beverage in this town, and you can imagine if someone isn't able to find something, they're going to quickly go on to the next thing. I think this is uniquely situated property, and if other businesses were to come with a similar challenge, I would be open to hearing their requests. To me, it would depend on the size of the sign, where it was situated. It wouldn't be an automatic yes. It would depend on a lot of factors. I think these unique factors for this unique parcel, I'm going to support it.
Anyone else wish to make a comment? All right, I guess we're ready for Dave.
Not to this particular issue, but I want to correct the record on the Arbor land thing. We had 2 sign variances, one we approved, one we declined. And they were both, one of the approval was based on some of the structural issues of the building that pre-existed, the signage that pre-existed in the building that kind of caused it. But that was totally a different situation. But that's not to this argument.
Okay, I think we're ready for a motion.
Sure, I'll make a motion.
Great, thank you, Dave.
ZBA 24-0026, 1000 East Stadium Boulevard. In accordance with established standards for approval, the Zoning Board of Appeals hereby grants a 68 square foot variance from section 5.24.5, subsection B, subsection 1, other mixed use and non-residential and special purpose districts, and table 5.24-3, other mixed use and non-residential and special purpose district permanent signs. The existing property has 200 square feet of signage and a freestanding sign facing East Stadium Boulevard. The variance allows a two-sided freestanding sign to be installed along East Stadium Boulevard, advertising the abutting restaurant use.
And support?
Support.
Okay. All right, ready for the roll call? Julie?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Dave?
DeVarty, no.
Christina?
Yes?
Dharma?
Yes.
And I also vote yes. 5 votes, the application is approved.
Thank you.
And our next item of business is 2845 South State Street, ZBA application number 24-0023. And city staff, John.
Tom Covert of Midwestern Consulting is seeking 4 variances from Table 5.17-8 Transit Corridor Additional Standards. The property is being redeveloped for a new mixed-use development at the northeast corner of State Street and Eisenhower Parkway. The property is zoned TC1 Transit Corridor District. 4 different requirements of the TC1 district are a variance from the building dimensions standard. The building width parallel to the street may not exceed 250 feet, and the building maximum diagonal dimension may not exceed 360 feet is being requested for building A1. A variance from the building frontage standard. The minimum building frontage shall be 70% of the lot width applied to each block if the site is divided into smaller blocks as required, is requested for building A1. A variance from the building dimensions standard is requested for building C2, and a variance from the building frontage standard is requested for building D1. The TC1 Transit Corridor District was adopted into the Unified Development Code in 2022. It is intended along the existing transit corridors to facilitate, encourage, and support redevelopment and infill development to realize mixed-use developments and achieve densities that support and sustain transit service, as well as encourage housing and more sustainable forms of development. Development in the TC1 district is subject to the normal development standards provided in the UDC, as well as additional standards provided in Table 5.17-8 of Section 5.17.7. These additional standards address building massing and design features to ensure new buildings in the TC1 district achieve the district's intent for higher density and more pedestrian-friendly designs. New buildings must have smaller footprints but be taller and located closer to public sidewalks and better access to non-motorized transportation than permitted in other zoning districts. To date, there are several projects in the conceptual phase and 1 site plan. The subject project has been submitted for review and approval in the TC1 district. A petition to amend 3 components of Table 5.17-8, as well as the use specific standard for parking structures in Section 5.16.3L and Section 5.5.37.2 specific terms are also being considered by the City Planning Commission. The 3 components of Table 5.17-8 requested to be amended include curb cut limits, building frontage, and building dimensions. The subject property located at the northeast corner of South State Street and East Eisenhower Parkway is a proposed site plan project to construct 15 new buildings in a downtown-style development around 2 existing buildings at 777 and 789 East Eisenhower. New buildings include a 150-room hotel building, 8 apartment buildings with a total of 229 affordable and 839 market-rate units, 3 restaurant buildings, and 3 parking structures with a total of 2,476 vehicle parking spaces. Development includes 93,500 square feet of ground floor commercial space. Site includes 6 parcels, 777 and 789 East Eisenhower, 2803, 2845, and 2991 South State Street, and 2800 Boardwalk. Construction is being planned in 6 phases. When complete, this neighborhood will include a vibrant mix of services, housing, offices, retail, restaurants, entertainment, hospitality, and other amenities that serve all age groups, income levels, household types, ability levels, and cultures. The open spaces created within will become the heart of this neighborhood, programmed seasonally with events like farmers markets, tailgates, and music series to celebrate the community, and will be open to all. Existing streetscapes will be enhanced with new landscaping, and a new internal street network will be developed with sidewalks, landscaping, and on-street parking. The 777 and 789 buildings will remain and be incorporated into the project. Description of the following four being requested variances are as follows. Variance number 1 is being requested for building A1 to allow the proposed building to exceed the maximum allowable length of 250 feet by 26 feet. The second variance, also associated with building 1 or A1, would allow the building to have a frontage of 52% of the block, which does not meet the required 70%. The proposed building is approximately 21 feet less than the required length to meet the 70% block length requirement along East Eisenhower. Variance 3, if granted, would allow building C2 to exceed the maximum building length of 250 feet by 44 feet. The proposed building is to be constructed at a length of 294 feet along Boardwalk Drive. And lastly, variance number 4 being requested would provide relief to building D1 to have a building frontage of 49% or 21% less than the required 70%. The overall building length proposed is 117 feet in length or 50 feet less than what would be required to meet the 70% dimension along Boardwalk Drive. If you'll turn your attention to the monitors, you'll see the first slide shows the subject property highlighted in the center of your screen, and it's at the northeast corner of Eisenhower Parkway and South State Street. The next slide is the location map showing surrounding properties and existing conditions. The next slide is the zoomed in aerial photo of the existing conditions and of the property. The next slide is the survey that was submitted with the application. And the next slide is a site map of the proposed development. As you can see, building A1, which is part of the first and second variance requests, building C2, I believe, and building D1. C2 is variance 3, building D1 is variance 4. This was submitted with the application, and it describes the variance requests. As I just said, building A1, showing that the building length along South State, the building width requirement along Eisenhower, and the C2 variance, and the D1 variance, building D1. These are photos that I took of the existing conditions on the site. I think everybody's familiar with the 777 building. This is looking down Boardwalk Drive. And this is a view of the current gas station at the corner of the Eisenhower and State Street, and you see the 777 building in the background. That is the end of my presentation, and I will take any questions that you have at this time.
Any questions for John?
I will also say that Alexis DeLeo is available. She is the planner that is associated with this site plan, and she can also take any questions.
I have 2 questions.
Okay.
I could actually ask them as a single question. I'd like some background on why originally the 70% frontage rule, and also why the no more than 250 feet in length for a building. And both of these are now being up for reconsideration. But what would help me knowing why these particular rules were adopted and what the thinking might be as to what the city council might do in the future, and why is this happening now?
Okay, good question.
That's a long
I will
question, sorry.
defer to Alexis, who is the most familiar with the TC1 district, to answer those. We can't hear you. Hold on, Alexis, we are having audio problems.
We can't hear you.
I'm not sure why we can't hear her. Hold on. Hold on. Try it now. Nope. That doesn't do anything. Alexis, can you try talking now? Hold on.
We can hear you.
I can hear her through my computer. Now it's echoing.
You've got an echo there.
Yep. I don't know.
Did you hear that? Did you hear the I got an echo part?
Yeah, I heard it twice.
Well, maybe she went indoors. That would help.
Now try to.
I would have to ask a question.
Go ahead, Alexis.
And then what was and then background on another requirement?
Yes, Alexis, I'm just seeking a background on the reasoning for the 70% frontage rule and the no building can be longer than 250 feet. I want to know why they were adopted, and I understand it's up for revision and perhaps removing these requirements, but I'd like some understanding about how important they are and how they tie into this type of development. That's really what I'm after.
First, I'll take them in order, building requirement.
Well, yeah, you probably should hold off because you're not coming in publicly yet.
Okay.
we're making do with what we have.
Okay.
I can hear you, and I think the other members, we can all hear you. So go ahead.
All right, thank you. I'll take those questions in order. First, building frontage. Now, the TC1 district tried to take the best elements of some of our existing districts. And so we have minimum and maximum minimum and maximum front setbacks, variable height limit that was taken from office district, two-story minimum that was taken from downtown. The building frontage requirement was new, but it was seeking to replicate downtown and create street wall, which is sort of solid buildings on both sides of the road. Build parcels outside of downtown are really variable in size, and a lot of them are very big. Wanted to make sure that development went up on the road and tried to fill in, tried to start creating. So that's where the building frontage requirement comes into play. The second element was the building dimension. Those are, again, a little bit modeled after downtown. Downtown does not have a building width dimension, but it does have a maximum diagonal dimension. And that is to encourage and sort of force buildings to be slimmer, less diagonal dimension, and therefore taller. The TC1 district requires 70% building frontage. The Planning Commission just considered an amendment to do away with that, to remove that standard. They started talking about how is 70% the right number, too high, too low, and they came to the, with staff's recommendation, they came to the conclusion that the existing standards for building dimension, for minimum and maximum front setback, and so forth, are more important than arbitrarily filling 70% of a lot frontage. It's more of the quality than the quantity. And we looked at a lot of examples of other developments that have higher and lower percentages, all seemed fine. So the Planning Commission is going to recommend that the building frontage 70% be removed as a requirement. The building dimensions, as I mentioned, it's a way to get at more but smaller and taller buildings. The 250-foot dimension was based off of the blocks downtown centered at Main and Huron. For example, that block from Main southward to Washington, that's 260 feet. We rounded down to 250, and that's pretty much agreed that that's a very comfortable block. So we thought all new development should replicate downtown's dimensions. The Planning Commission has recommended that that dimension be increased to 300 feet. This will allow for a little bit more flexibility in design. It'll allow for a parking structure, if need be, to be flat levels and not all ramped levels. Those amendments were recommended for approval, but have not yet moved to City Council. I'm going to stop there. Let me know if you want more background, though.
Good. Thank you. That was very helpful. Any other questions? I think I still have an echo.
We can hear you.
Magic. Good. Thank you, Alexis. Any other questions for Alexis? Any other questions for John? All right, Mr. Covert, you're up. Identify yourself, sign in, and
Yep,
go ahead.
absolutely. Good evening. members of the Zoning Board of Appeals. My name's Tom Covert. I'm with Midwestern Consulting, and I'm here tonight with Andy Andre, representing the owner-developer team, and likely online, we also have Ben Ritterboss from LAS, one of the project architects, and Don Brogan from Crawford Hoying, also representing the owner-developer. And thank you for your reviewing and considering the variance here tonight. And thank you, John, for your great presentation of the project and our site. There's just a couple of things that I will include to mention here. With regard to our project is about 23 acres in size, and that's going to be important because I think that's one of the things that leads to decision-making and how our layout fits within the site. It's currently home to the iconic 777 building at the northeast corner of South State and Eisenhower. The site is in the TC1 zoning district. It has extensive frontage on South State, Eisenhower, and Boardwalk. South State and Eisenhower are both transit designated roadways, so Boardwalk is not. And then what we are, as John explained, requesting 4 variances concerning 3 of our proposed buildings. So a little bit further on the Arbor South project and the plan that's been submitted for review, for site plan review. It is an infill and redevelopment project of basically the surface parking areas that exist adjacent to the office buildings. Again, we're adding over 1,000 residential units, including affordable housing, retail space, structured parking. We are having, or are converting that surface parking to structured parking to support both the existing office use and the proposed uses. We weren't certain, I know John shared the slide and it was in your packet, we weren't certain that when crafting the TC1 zoning code that it had contemplated a 23-acre project with 2 existing buildings with proximity to property lines and right-of-ways. There are public utility easements that crisscross through the site and follow access corridors, and then also a site that would have such extensive transit corridor frontage in South State and East Eisenhower. As you might imagine then, with all those things happening, that created conflicts or hardship in our layout of the site in meeting the code requirements when they're as specific as they were and currently in code. So what we're asking for, here's another way to look at it, is we're asking for 4 variances relating to 3 buildings from 2 code elements. So we're asking for a variance to the frontage requirements, as John indicated, for building A1 and D1. So our northeasternmost building and our southwesternmost building. And then we're asking for a variance to the building length for A1 and C2. So again, the same building at the southwest corner, and then the central building to the frontage along Boardwalk. Our hardship as it relates to the unique existing condition of the site are the existing building locations, the public utilities, infrastructure, and easements, the existing access points, the building length being limited to 250 feet. So when we start looking at where the existing access points are on the easements, it really set where the central road, what we call our main street, in a certain location based on that and based on the proximity to the buildings, and then that set the block lengths as we went through the site and developed the layout. In this limited time, I'm happy to get into the details, but I'm not going to get into each of the details of each of the specific buildings. But I will say, as John mentioned, the last time we met, we tabled or postponed. Since then, we had the opportunity to pursue a parallel path. So we're pursuing the variance requests, and we were pursuing a parallel plan where we had requested the zoning modifications and had those running in parallel. Why we're pursuing those 2 options is we have a site plan currently with a layout that's been submitted that currently doesn't meet code. So we either need variances or we need the code revised. So Since our last meeting, Planning Commission, through some well-crafted zoning language that staff put together, had the opportunity to review some changes. Those changes were unanimously approved by the Planning Commission. Many of those, I'll say many of the changes do have implication to our project, and they would remove, if you will, the need for these variance requests. However, one of the items with that is those requests from Planning Commission won't get to City Council until maybe September, October, or November. So really, that creates a lot of time that we have many factors, including the timeline, that's indicated to us that it's in our best interest to pursue these variances, so then we'll have a compliant site plan that can be acted on and reviewed and so on. So it's based on the unique circumstances of the site that created the need for the variance, and then to carry that further, the fact that we have a timeline that we're trying to meet with the project continues our interest in the variance, because that helps us have a conforming site plan then for staff to review.
Any questions for Mr. Dave?
I've got a couple questions. I like this whole, conceptually, I really like this. I do want to note there are it's a lot of paved surface out here, and I see you're opening a lot of that up for permeable ground where groundwater can be charged in. You're putting in a new detention pond. All of those things are really good. Do you have a sense how much added permeable ground you're adding to the site, if any? Just as a big ballpark?
Yeah, I don't have that number currently, but let's talk about stormwater for a minute.
Right.
The two existing ponds, the one on the north side and the one on the south at the corner of Boardwalk and Eisenhower, will remain. And then we are placing a portion of our stormwater management underground because the site, because we're impacting more than 50% of the site with the new development, we have to follow the current stormwater standards. So there wasn't a comparison in our calculations for stormwater to compare impervious to new impervious. So I don't have that number, but we are accounting for the stormwater that we're accounting for the stormwater from the existing site, and then we're accounting for the stormwater from the new, I can't call it new impervious surfaces, some of it's new, but for the whole site. So we're bringing that into conformance. So there's a lot more volume of water that we're treating, and then there's also, we're treating the volume, and then we're treating the quality by helping to remove erosion, particulates, that kind of thing.
So my sense looking at this schematic is it wrong that you're adding more permeable open ground, it looks like? Maybe not.
I would think it's very close.
Okay. And then the other question, again, I'm not raising these questions in any way of trying to present obstacles or anything, because conceptually this is just a beautiful concept for this part of the city. Was there any thought to going with a PUD with this, which would, the site plan would become the zoning? So you're kind of removed from, I know the city has a PUD zoning process, and you could just create a site plan, a zoned PUD unit. Was there any thought to that early in the process?
There may have been thoughts of that, because this project has been one that the ownership team has been considering for some time and trying to figure out what to do with the massive surface parking lots and how to interject some energy and vibrancy to the site beyond just office buildings. So if they considered that previously, that was because it would have been an option. But with the TC1 zoning change, it's brought to light and brought forward this opportunity.
Thank you.
Christina?
Yeah.
Tom, I think in your presentation, and it's in the written, the response regarding the existing public utility infrastructure, the drawings are so small. Can you talk to where those are located and in
Yep.
fact, how that impacted the design?
If John can turn on my screen here. So that was one of the things that I was looking to maybe get into a little bit more detail. But when the screen comes on here, you're going to see that Central Drive, that Main Street. So you have the 777 building and the 789 building. They have an entry road between them. There's public utilities and infrastructure that exists there,
You're talking about east-west?
north-south. Then it connects to the east-west.
Okay.
That east-west has public utilities. Actually, both of those have not only public utilities, but franchise utilities. And then when you look further north beyond the parking field there and that northern access drive, there's also existing utilities and infrastructure that reside there. And then obviously all around the site and the public roadways as well. Then you'll see two areas that are shaded with kind of a blue checkered pattern. Those are stormwater easements or other easements of drainage that also reside at the site. So that T, if you will,
Yep.
and then the northern access point created kind of the block cadence as you move north through the site. Then we added because the curb cuts are limited and we don't want to have a bunch of curb cuts along Eisenhower Parkway, the proposed plan has a right-in only kind of towards the corner of South State along building A1, which is one of the buildings we're asking for the variance for.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? I have a few questions, sir. So in looking at this, my sense is, and you've not done anything to contradict that, I think, is that retrofitting isn't really the right word here, but at some point you say you wanted to utilize the existing drives, obviously not touch the two big buildings, but keep the utilities and stormwater and the curb cuts the same. I mean, in theory, you can move anything around, but if you want to minimize cost and put these things in most expeditiously, you don't want to have to mess with all the underground utilities. Is that sort of a fair statement? The project was predicated, let's see if we can build something without messing too much with underground stuff. It's saying rather inelegantly. Was that the sense? Is that how this project was approached?
Yes, that was part of it. There were actually quite a list of things that led to how we were laying this site out in particular, that being some of it. We also, when we talk about building A1 and D1, we had some thoughts. So building D1, boardwalk, so building D1's at the northeast corner. So across the site, from north to south, we have over 30 feet of fall, actually. And as you go across our northern access road from Boardwalk to State Street, just across building D1, we have 10 to 14 feet of grade change. So to enter that building, we need to have some entrances on Boardwalk. We have to have entrances on our access drive. And then we're creating this public plaza or courtyard that comes up and slopes. So you'll be able to enter at Boardwalk down here, and as you walk through that courtyard, you'd be able to enter at a different elevation because we're changing that grade. So
that dictated then the 117 feet rather than the required square.
Right.
Sorry, got it. All right.
Yeah, and then A1, because of where we are with our east-west road and where the existing building is, we're trying to break that land area up into a couple of blocks. And as far as the north-south dimension goes, we were looking at creating one of the things we heard at the citizen participation meetings was crossing Eisenhower along State Street was difficult. And we wanted to create something comforting and kind of a pedestrian plaza area there at the corner. And if you think about that intersection, each of the corners is kind of set back. We have kind of a pond and a fountain, a brick wall, and then the building to the south has open space, and then the corner by the mall is also set back. So when rezoning happens and we have something that puts different masses, it can feel unbalanced. So if we're putting all the buildings up to that corner and hugging the corner like the code wants us, that's going to look odd for a while until other parcels redevelop. So we were thoughtful, the designers were thoughtful to push that building back and create that public space. And then we don't efficiently or effectively have room to break that up into blocks. We don't have curb cuts available. So you end up with an area that requires a little bit longer building.
Well, according to city staff person Alexis, I mean, you had to have a building less than 250, but now the city is saying you could have one maybe less than 300. And you're asking for 276 feet. So it sounds like that's variance is okay with the city or will be. It's not, the city isn't being very hard about the 250 feet. So I do have one, so the first two variances concern building A1, and I don't really have a problem with those. I do have a question with building C2, the parking structure, and that had to do with the maximum width. If you could explain why you went with the width that is as opposed to a smaller width, and why the width you went with was necessary, sir.
Yep. So one of the things that helps with the width of that building, C2, so that is so that building is a parking structure. That parking structure is going to have space along boardwalk that is retail, flex space kind of stuff that you can, it activates or energizes the frontage along boardwalk. If we make that parking structure smaller, it becomes inefficient to have some of those spaces and have some of the ancillary things that come along with those spaces, like solid waste collection and storage, access. So by elongating it, we felt like we were meeting the 70% requirement. We were also then having a building front that was too large. And then we also, the team uses the term future-proofing the parking structure. With a parking structure of that length, the ramp can be flat, less steep, and it's easier for conversion from parking structure to other uses, is my understanding.
Okay, thank you. I have no more questions. Anybody else? Okay. Is there anybody from the audience who would you wish to say something? You're the only person in the audience. Thank you for that. Are there any callers?
There are no callers.
Okay, and I don't think we received any letters or emails from anyone about this, correct?
There was no correspondence.
No correspondence, thank you. All right. Well, we are, as Candace says, in discussion, as she puts it well. We're in discussion. Yes, Julie.
So I feel like at some point I'm going to be very familiar with this project because this is, I think, the third and a half, fourth presentation of this. And as I mentioned, the Planning Commission approved unanimously these changes. The petitioner has been very good at working with the city. This is, TC1 is a new zoning code, and so there are things that sound good in theory, but then when given an actual parcel and what we want to do with it, things change a little. And so Planning Commission did approve not these particular changes, but changes that would have made this not required, and so I approved that last week. So I will also approve it this week because I think that this is it all makes sense, and it's a good use of like, hey, it's a new zoning code, and there are some tweaks, but none of these are sort of nefarious uses of. It's just like, oh, this is slightly changed. So they make a lot of sense and
Incorporated into the whole district.
Mm-hmm. But this is the first project or the first? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks.
Well, I would also like to say I'm in favor of this. These things are very difficult. I think it's a smart thing to do to try to minimize working with underground utilities, curb cuts, all these other constraints. And the sense I have from Alexis and, Julie, your comments is that these things are easy to imagine how big a building should be and how long and all that, but when you're putting numbers, it gets a little difficult, particularly when you're trying to, when you're working with the space that's already partially impacted and you don't want to move big buildings around. It's not like this is rural land that's going to be 23 acres of, where you can plan however you want, in which case it would be surprising to ask for a variance. But here, there are a number of constraints on the site, and it's nice to see this developed, and I'll be voting in favor of this. Any other comments? I guess we're ready for a motion.
I'm going to propose, unless there's some objection to this, all 4 variances in one motion. And if any of my fellow members on the ZBA would prefer to pull one of those out for some reason, then I would be open to pulling one out. But I think in the interest of disposing of this in one vote, if possible, I'd like to propose all 4 variances in one motion.
I agree with that. Anybody disagree with that? No? Okay, good.
Okay.
Go, Dave.
ZBA 24-0023, 2845 South State Street. Based on, or in accordance with established standards for approval, the Zoning Board of Appeals hereby grants the following variances. Variance number 1, to allow for building A1 to exceed the maximum allowable of 250 feet by 26 feet. Variance number 2, also associated with building A1, would allow the building to have a frontage of 52% of the block, which does not meet the required 70%. The proposed building is approximately 21 feet less than the required length to meet the 70% block length requirement along East Eisenhower. Variance number 3, to allow building C2 to exceed the maximum building length of 250 feet by 44 feet. The proposed building is to be constructed at a length of 294 feet along Boardwalk Drive. Variance number 4, to allow building D1 to have a building frontage of 49% or 21% less than the required 70%. The overall building length proposed is 117 feet in length or 50 feet less than what would be required to meet that 70% dimension along Boardwalk Drive.
Support? Julie? And ready for the voting. So Dharma,
Yes.
Christina,
Yes.
I also vote yes. Mike,
Yes.
Dave,
DeVarty, yes.
and Julie.
Yes.
All right, 1, 2, 3. You have passed 6-0. Thank you. All right. All right, and now we're into the next item, which is the alteration to a non-conforming structure, proposed text amendment to the zoning ordinance. Hi, Brett.
So, last month, we had some new business, and that was addressing the Zoning Board of Appeals motion to change section 5.32.2, alteration to a non-conforming structure. And we had discussion about the changes, and we received some feedback. And at that time, I had asked for a motion to move this text amendment to the next phase, which would be to the Planning Commission. And the Planning Commission at that point, they actually formulate and create and finalize the language and the text amendment, and then ultimately goes to City Council. You guys wanted to have some discussion on that. We've had 2 emails in response to that, and I believe everyone saw those. They're in your packet, and so
with that being said, I'm going to kind of turn it over to Brett Leonard, who's the planning manager, and he can give some more background on this process and help me along in this journey.
Hey, John, I'm sorry, John.
Well, hold on, we can't hear you, Brett.
You
We're
might have
having
to press that magic button again, John.
And John, I had a question too. I didn't want it, but,
well, let's just let Brett talk
okay.
first.
Well, I was just wondering if my comments I wasn't here last time,
I-
so I sent an
Okay.
amended comment to you,
Yes,
but
but I think, were they in your packets? I thought they were in the packets.
I don't know. It's not version A, B, or C. I
If they're
can't,
not-
I haven't found them.
If they're not, I have a handout and I can give them to everybody.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't located that.
Go ahead, Brett. I can do this. I can hand these out if you're talking. Can you hear us?
I can you hear me okay?
Well,
You need to hit that magic button.
let me see here.
Even know you had a magic button, John.
Well,
He did something over there which worked with Alexis.
Can you hear me?
yes.
Okay. I feel it sounds a little bit like I'm in a haunted house, but I'm okay if you are. So good evening to the board. Just a reminder, my name is Brett Leonard. I'm the planning manager, and John had asked me to just certainly be available for any questions that you have. I think actually John did a really nice job talking about the overall process for text amendments. So my understanding is the first go round that I think you talked about the proposed amendments and conceptually, and since that, my understanding is you wanted to see some proposed language, which I think John has put together and included in the packet this time. That is fine. You can look at that language. As John indicated, I would just want to make it clear that it's possible that any language that you're seeing this evening could evolve as it winds its way through that lawmaking process of the Planning Commission and the City Council ultimately. So it's fine to look at that, but also I would just also make sure that you feel free as a board to just kind of convey what the desired outcome you would like to see. My understanding is at the core issue that the conversation has been is whether or not there's some opportunities for alterations to non-conforming structures of different types to perhaps have a easier process to consider than currently. That could be structured through some automatic approvals or by approvals by staff rather than to the Zoning Board of Appeals. However, part of that, again, you can sort of focus on the language as presented, or you're welcome to just sort of leave John and I with the sort of outcome that you'd like to recommend to the Planning Commission. That is, if you can describe the categories of projects that you're seeing on a regular basis, that you are crossing the back of your mind, saying like, you know, we always approve them, or what's kind of the benefit of us doing this particular project review, we can definitely work on crafting language if what is in front of you doesn't meet that need. So that's what all I have to offer. And like John, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Well, if I haven't. Turn off. That we've always approved of. In addition, for me, if the outside of the building, can you hear, if the outside of the building changes, I'm also comfortable if those outside changes meet current zoning setback requirements. So that's my view. I think there's probably agreement on the first point I made, if it's just interior, we don't need to see it. And I'd like to see if people also agree to the second point, if they're proposing changes that don't violate current setbacks on a non-conforming structure, we would be okay with that as well. So that's where I come from. How it's worded, I'm not the city attorney, I'm not the professional staff here. I leave that to your skills. Oh, Darla, sorry.
I think the thing that I see a lot that we tend to approve and seems silly, oh, is Brett talking?
In the number of units. I think one of the things right now that we have is that when you are increasing the number of units, it triggers even if it's an interior. So I just wanted to get a sense of, is that when you're, you know, I know you're one member of the board, appreciate the feedback from the board. Is your interest that interior alteration be very wide ranging? That is, whether it is residential, non-residential, whether it is increasing the size of existing units or increasing the total number of units. Is that absolute in your eyes for those interior renovations?
I think we're just talking residential property, Brett. Is that correct? Yeah, I'm seeing heads nod. This is only for
Yes.
residential property.
This is only residential properties. It would not affect commercial properties. Commercial properties will still have to seek variances from the zoning board of appeals.
And,
Yes,
Sorry, did I cut you off?
No, it's audio issues. The other one that I see that it seems like we always have agreement when it comes before us is when like an addition is put on the second floor that doesn't expand past the, you know, even if the setback is non-conforming, the building that they're adding on top of it doesn't increase that non-conformity out.
like
today.
the first one.
Yeah.
Yep. So that would be an alteration to a non-conforming structure, but it wouldn't be wholly on the interior. It's still an exterior change, but it's not expanding the footprint. So that should be approved obviously as well.
Yeah, that's what I think.
So, and that's what would be covered in this draft amendment. You have that before you too. I've handed that out tonight.
It's a
Do you,
I'm not seeing which
several
one.
versions.
just to clarify for everybody, the one that has no name on it, that's from me. That's an email that I sent on 7/10.
Okay.
So that's what that's all about. And that was in response to the versions A, B, and
Is this what you're looking
C.
for, John?
no, I handed it out to everyone.
This is what
Everyone
you
has
have.
it. It's right here. It's this one right here.
Oh.
Draft.
This one.
And you all have it. I gave it to you tonight.
Where is it?
Oh, right.
It says draft.
The red line text.
It's right here.
Oh, okay.
Well, we would not, it's not our job to approve final language.
That's correct.
Correct.
This is a draft that would cover basically everything that you've addressed. Residential alterations on interiors. And so basically what I was asking last month and I'm asking again tonight is on that correspondence, that memo that was in front of you, there's the resolution or the motion to go to the planning commission to move this forward to the next phase.
Got it.
And then once it goes to the planning commission, it's going to go to the ordinance review committee first. That's the first step in the process.
I think, to me, the language seems a lot more clear. So I'm looking at what's in blue.
Correct. Yep.
In item B, and it seems to, get to the essence of what we're trying to communicate. I was concerned before about thermal barrier, and that was going down a rabbit hole that was not needed at all. So I think this streamlines it, and it seems very clear to me that this achieves what we're hoping it should. So I'm good with this amendment. And it's for single-family and multifamily. Residential, does that need to be?
Yes, that's all for all residential.
For all,
Yep. It'll cover R1, R1A, or excuse me, R1A, R1B, R1C, R1D, R1E.
the R4 districts as well.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks. Okay, that's good.
So you'd like us to essentially approve going ahead with,
Not approve,
sorry,
draft
That's my pen.
a motion to move this
It flipped.
requested text amendment to the planning commission,
okay, so
which
another call for a
which you
voice.
as a board has requested to me. And so this is the language that's being crafted. I've listened to what you've had to say, and now we're ready to move it to the next phase.
So if I'm hearing you correctly at this point, near 8 o'clock, that a simple voice vote that we agree that would like this to be furthered to the planning commission for more consideration, essentially.
That's correct.
Okay. Dave?
So when I was looking at Todd's version A, B, and C, I've made a change instead of buildings envelope, buildings footprint, and take out that thermal barrier business. But I like version B. The proposed changes will allow alterations, and I take out to the interior, so it's going to be allow interior and exterior. Alterations to a non-conforming residential structure if the alteration does not expand outward the building's footprint beyond the current zoning ordinance's setback requirements.
Okay, so that's the feedback that we were given by one of the members, and it's kind of parallels this language right here, Dave. So we're not
so
approving.
this language
Yeah,
is-
well, yeah, it says essentially the same thing, just a little differently, but we're not approving language tonight. I'm just giving you information to feel comfortable to pass this motion to move this to the next
And then they can
phase.
edit this.
And then the board.
We don't make the call on this.
No,
Right.
the zoning board of
That's what's
appeals,
happening
the
here.
zoning board of
We are
appeals.
recommending something. We're not actually approving
Language, no. The zoning board.
So,
Correct.
but if,
Talk to Julie offline if you want to lobby her.
if something along version C, I think that should come to us.
That
Yeah,
won't, so.
I agree with Dave, but, you know,
But
just
version A
because
and
I
B
drafted
should
that,
be,
I'm
should
not
be
the
able to
draft.
be approved by staff.
It's not for me to
Correct.
define the language for the city.
If anything is beyond,
Farther into setbacks than the building's current envelope.
right, so so you want to see an addition, if there's a non-conforming structure that is encroaching 2 feet into a setback, and they want to do an addition that meets that 2-foot addition, you want to see that, because it's beyond the footprint of the existing building,
If it's new,
habitable space.
if it's beyond the footprint of the building, the existing building. So if it's, they can go,
That's what I'm-
they can
yes.
build within that setback at higher levels, but if they're increasing the size of the footprint of the building.
Right. What if they're just
I'd
doing
like
a,
to
what if they're just doing a bump out and squaring off a building? And it doesn't,
Then that's-
it doesn't increase the nonconformity.
Well, the problem is,
Can I help out here?
Yeah.
I think, because we had talked about it before, one, I think we're agreed, if it's interior residential, we don't need to see it. If it's going to bump out the building, if it meets current zoning requirements, specifically setbacks and some other stuff, then we don't need to see it either.
Correct, because that would be approved staff administratively.
Right,
So,
right,
yep.
right? That's it.
right,
Yeah.
but if there's.
We're not saying they're
But-
going to, it was your bad scenario, if somebody has been approved a non-conforming setback a foot from the property line, we don't want them to push the rest of the building out to that. They just, if they're going to change the outside shape of the building, they would have to meet current zoning setback requirements.
For administrative only approval.
Yeah, right.
They could
Yeah.
still come to us as a board for a variance to extend beyond.
Correct. So
Right.
those two things.
And
Interior, we don't
Dave,
care.
you-
If they do something to the outside and it meets current zoning requirements, that's fine.
And everyone has the ability to send me an email or additional information, and that will be attached with the packet to the planning commission for the ORC.
And I
For
think
consideration.
we've done our job, we've made our views known, what the final language would be will be the professional staff of the city to determine. Not me, or us. So I think, oh, Dartmouth,
Well,
sorry.
it'll be up for council to determine.
I appreciate this discussion. And I assume that the information from this discussion will be conveyed to the planning commission in some way. And I appreciated the memo that says over the past 10 years, 95% of these petitions have been approved by the ZBA. That suggests to me maybe it's useful looking at the 5% that weren't. I don't know if there's going to be some kind of further staff analysis when this goes to planning commission. But that's really, I think, where they hammer out these details, and I'm comfortable with that. I'm happy for this change. I don't think I've seen us decline a single one since I've been on ZBA. So I think this is positive, and I appreciate the work.
So I think we're ready for a voice vote to push this to the planning commission, yes? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Is there anybody against? No? Do you have what you need, John?
I do. I appreciate it.
Good. Thank you, sir. And any new business? No. Reports from council.
Okay, go ahead.
Sorry.
That was it, the
Yeah,
reports from council,
yeah.
yes.
Darby, you're on again.
Sorry, I have this pulled up. So our last meeting, as some of you may have heard, we considered accepting money from the state to replace DTE's sodium lights with LED. And this just intersected with the dark sky ordinance in an interesting way. The dark sky ordinance does not apply to public rights of way, nor is DTE beholden to our local lighting ordinance. But lots of interesting discussions about the temperature of the lights and whether they conform, they're dark sky compliant, they will be. And then the real point of discussion was the brightness of the lights on local streets. The idea with dark skies being that you shouldn't have light that's stronger than it needs to be in the context. All the lights will be shielded. Long story short, council postponed this to give staff hopefully more time to work with DTE to get 2 different kinds of LED lights. So anyway, just thought this body would be interested because we've talked about the dark sky ordinance a couple of times. I think that's it as far as what's relevant to this group.
Good, thank you. All right. Any, I think we're ready for a motion to adjourn. All in favor of adjourning? John, did you have something to say?
No, nothing
No,
more at
okay.
this time.
All those in favor of ending the meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody objecting? No. Okay, thank you.